So nice to be back here with you all this week. So good to be here, truly, truly. So just a couple of announcements before we start. Big thank you to the donations which came in this week. Especially thank you to Taylor, Tatiana, Lynn, and Shauna, who both wrote me really nice cards. So thank you truly for that. And thank you so much for your generosity in supporting the Sangha here. If you'd like to make a donation, please visit craigholiday.com. And thank you. Yes, thank you truly. The next thing on the list is I'm going to be on retreat starting on Thursday. And so on Sunday, the 21st, we'll have no class. And if any of you are wanting to join the retreat last minute, please reach out, show up. If you need a scholarship, just ask for one. There's plenty of space. It's going to be a small and intimate retreat, and really looking forward to it. Really looking forward. And so, let me see. I felt like I had one more announcement, but it's my mind is feeling quite blank right now. And so if you have a question, feel free to type it in the chat or ask for the microphone if you're on the Zoom platform. And I'd be happy to meet with you. Happy to meet with you. So earlier today, I was over on the other side of the mountain pass, over in Telluride, Colorado. And it's funny, Telluride's not very far from my home. As the crow flies. But here in Colorado, because of the mountains, it makes it hard to get to places. And so you have to drive a couple hours actually to get over to Telluride. But my wife and my little girl they're out of town, and so I thought I'd just give myself a little retreat. Just spending some time in nature, in the mountains. And so I took my bike and packed it up in the van and just went out into the wilderness. And if you've never been to Colorado, or if you've never been to Telluride, it's one of the most beautiful places in the country. And so it's worth checking out. The beautiful thing about getting out into nature with no agenda is it's very good at just making the mind stop. If you feel into nature, just the presence of nature, immediately you feel this hugeness that's pregnant with life, pregnant with divinity. It's spacious and it's vast and radiant and luminous. And I'm always just so happy to spend time in nature. Last night I was out under the stars and just by myself. Couldn't have been happier. Couldn't have been happier. Not a concern in the world. Just opening my heart and allowing my consciousness to be completely empty and as big as the sky, as big as that universe, the heavens above. This morning when I got up and I went to the trailhead, and there was this lady, and she got out of her car, and she was like walking around with a walker. And so of course, she couldn't go very far on this mountainous slope. She could only make, 5 or 6 steps away from her car before she had to go back and get into it. And I looked at her, as I was just, kind of going over in my head, did I have water? Did I have, my hat? Did I have my backpack? Just the basic essentials for my hike. And she looked at me and she smiled. And she said, "Have a wonderful hike." And I looked back at her. And here she was, the best she could do was step out of her car and get a view. Get a view of the mountains, get a view of the hike. She wasn't going to be hiking anywhere just because of her physical limitations. And I just looked back at her, and it was like Christ was looking at me, telling me, have a good hike. I imagine if any of us were in her body and we saw, a young man, I'm going to call myself young, with an able body and going off to go climb a mountain. If we were in a body, her body, a body that wasn't working, that'd be a moment to be bitter, to be complaining. It would be a moment to say that life is not fair. Life is not fair. Why me? Why does my body not work? But she didn't say that to me. She looked at me with a big smile and said, have a great hike. And I was so touched by this. Her innocence, her gentleness, and I just felt this love that she had for life, despite the physical limitations of her body. She had those and you just feel, that it's like, one crutch in one hand and one in the other. And it's just not, the body isn't working, but she chose to come out and to smile. To come out and smile. And it was so beautiful. And so it was deeply touching to see this individual with such a big heart, sharing her love despite the physical limitations of the body. And, sometimes life does this to us here on planet Earth. Sometimes life gives us a body, a mind or emotional nature that just doesn't work. It doesn't work. And when we have a physical limitation, a mental limitation, an emotional limitation, like for example, if we've been beat up by life and we carry around this jadedness from our past, or sometimes we carry around a jadedness because of our ancestral karma, our generational suffering that we are given. Sometimes life is just hard. And when life is hard, if we are attached to our mind, if we believe the thoughts that go through our consciousness when life is hard, it is very easy to be bitter, to suffer immensely. It's one thing just to live with the pain of having a body that doesn't work, but it's something separate to complain about this body eternally to resist life, to hold our hand up at God and say, why me? This isn't fair. This is not right. How come everyone else gets to walk around planet Earth, but I cannot? I cannot. And so within each and every one of us, we have the opportunity to have what I call like our own personal illusion. Our own personal illusion. And I encourage you this moment, just to take a breath, to look inside and say, what is this? Like, what is my own personal illusion? Like the big one. The big one. For me, I've struggled with chronic pain for most of my adult life. And so sometimes the illusion comes forward that my body should be working more perfectly. It should be free of pain, free of headaches. It should be free of headaches and body aches. When I was young, the big illusion was that I was unloved, that I was abandoned by God. Abandoned by God. And I saw life, through this lens of abandonment, that I was unworthy of love, that God was not here, that I was alone and isolated. Here on planet Earth. Here on planet Earth. And I knew I had a choice when I was young to believe, in the voice of my personal illusion that I was alone, that I was isolated, that God did not care. Or I could open my heart and have faith. Tremendous faith. And so one of the great ways I healed the feeling of abandonment is through coming into the heart and developing faith. An incredible faith. Faith like a mountain. And this helped me to open and evolve out of this illusion that I had been abandoned. And this woman that I saw today, I saw that in her too, that she had a body that didn't work. And she looked at the young man who was, also at the trailhead. And when she saw him, get out of his van and, start to hustle up the mountain, she didn't complain. She didn't say, poor me. She didn't say, I'm a victim of life. She came into the generosity of her heart and said, have a good hike. Have a good hike. The smile and a twinkle in her eye. And so again, it's important that we ask, what is my illusion? What's the one that I've held on to for years? Where am I bitter inside? Where am I attached? Where do I feel like a victim? A victim of life. Perhaps it's, my family has been mean to me. They all gang up on me. I'm the I'm the runt of the bunch, like the runt. It's like the little puppy, the one who didn't get all the love, who didn't get all the nutrients. Perhaps it's, I should make more money than I do. I should be seen. I should be bigger or smaller. Whatever it is. I should be in relationship with my high school sweetheart. Why did someone else run off with him or her? Whatever it is, when we believe in our illusion, we suffer. We suffer. And again, one of the ways we come out of the illusion is through admitting reality, admitting what is, what's true here and now, without any thoughts that life should be different, that life should be different. I can remember many years ago when I was feeling deeply betrayed. I was going over the events of the betrayal, again and again and again in the space of my mind, just replaying the events. And the more I replayed my story of why, this betrayal should not have happened, the more I replayed it, the more I suffered. I'd go to sleep at night replaying the events. I would wake up in the morning replaying the events. On my lunch break, I would replay the events of betrayal. This should not happen. This should not have happened. This is a bunch of malarkey. It's not fair. Whatever it is. And I realized the more I replayed the events in my mind, the more tight and tense my body felt, the more heartache I felt in my emotional nature. And I noticed that my sense of awareness began to contract more and more and more. There were times when, I was literally at a great master's home, and that's my teacher. And I was doing seva. I was doing work for him. The sky was bright and blue. I was with my teacher who deeply and profoundly loved me. He cared for me. He supported me. He nurtured me. And I was spinning a story in my head. It's too hot. It's too cold. She shouldn't have said this or she shouldn't have said that. This isn't fair. Life isn't fair. And I would just spin and spin all day long, mulling over some story, something that I couldn't control, something that I couldn't fix, something I couldn't handle. And I would just repeat this story again and again and again, as if that, like if I kept repeating the story, somehow I would find a way to solve or to have a solution to this very truth that we are not in control. We're not in control. But there were times when my teacher, he looked at me, he said, "Craig, what are you doing? What are you doing? What's going on in you?" Because my teacher is deeply intuitive. He was one of those individuals that there were times when I was actually afraid to be with him because my thoughts were so negative, and I knew that he knew every thought in my mind. He just did. He was an individual like that who he just knew how I was feeling. He knew what I was thinking. And so when he would say, "Craig, where's your consciousness? Where's your head at?" He knew that I was spinning in pain. I was spinning in pain. And he gently reminded me, "What's here now, Craig? What's here?" And so beyond, the vast spaciousness, the big blue sky, this incredible wonder, that was, the space of his retreat center. I wasn't able to see that. And so he would remind me, like, what's here, Craig? What are you struggling with? And I would say the story out loud. I'm struggling with this thing. And he'd gently remind me or ask, can you control this thing, Craig? Can you control what, this person thinks about you? Can you control what this person is doing to you, Craig? Can you control their response? And I would stop and realize, no, I can't control it. I can't control any of it. I cannot control it. And for half a second, I would feel like tremendous dread. But then when I took a deeper breath and just let go into this truth that I can't control, I don't need to control. I don't need to control that which I can't. And with that, oftentimes I would laugh, I would breathe, I would smile, and then I would begin to see the beautiful reality, which was everywhere. The big blue sky, or the beautiful trees blowing in the wind. My teacher, he lived on the side of a mountain, and there's all these aspen trees. And if you've ever been in aspen trees, they have all these little leaves, and when the wind blows, they just shimmer with light, shimmer with radiance. And then, of course, in the wintertime, we might be out there in 4 feet of snow or 5 feet of snow. And when the snow covers the whole world, it's so beautiful. It's so silent. So radiant. Where's your head? Where's your consciousness? Is it repeating the past? Believing something it can't control, fighting with something it can't control, believing something which is untrue. Where is your consciousness? Is it spinning around in hell, in your own particular illusion, which is, oftentimes our own particular illusion is connected with our deep wound. And so it's good to know this. Like, where am I wounded? Where do I hold on? Where do I fear? Where do I fear? For where there's fear, oftentimes there's a great illusion, a great internal struggle. And for some of us, we're so lost in our story that we don't even realize that this is happening. A number of weeks ago, someone reached out to me, and they just started attacking me. Sending me nasty emails saying I was no good. No good. And I had to look into it and see, is this their illusion? Is it my illusion? Is there some great shadow within my own consciousness where it's true that I haven't been showing up better for this person? And so, of course, I always recommend, if someone gives you nasty feedback or even a little bit of feedback, to just start with a basic sense of humility. Is it true what they're saying? Is it true? And of course, if you can find it in yourself, whether it's 5%, 3%, or maybe it's 99%, when you listen with humility to feedback, your consciousness stays open. It stays open. But if you listen with defensiveness, you join your friend in your own personal illusion. Sometimes the two of you may create a communal illusion. A communal illusion. Or you can join in pain, you can join in hell. Couples are very good at creating a communal illusion. I'm going to be codependent, you be codependent, we can be codependent together and really get in a messy place. My wound is coming forward, your wound is coming forward, and let's meet in the middle and just drive each other crazy. Drive each other crazy. And this is how most people live on planet Earth, as we drive each other crazy. But one of the great ways to step out of this, communal illusion or personal illusion is just to step back and ask, what's true? What's true? Am I believing thoughts which are untrue? Such as, this person shouldn't be attacking me. This person shouldn't be feeling the way they're feeling. This person shouldn't be complaining. Because the truth is, they are doing that. They are doing that. And so if we argue with reality and say, no, they should not. They should not be emotional. They should not be hormonal. They should not be young and immature. Or they should not be smarter than me, or whatever it is. If we say they should not, but they are, we're going to suffer. We're going to suffer. And so it takes someone who's truly open and truly vulnerable to simply listen to what others are saying. To listen and say, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. To notice the subtlety in what they're saying. Notice the truth, if there is any truth in what they're saying. Notice the illusion if they're speaking an untruth. Because a lot of times people speak to us with great truth, and other times they speak to us with great untruth. Great untruth. The beautiful thing about being around children is they tend to tell the truth about how they're feeling without a filter. Sometimes they scream, sometimes they shout. Oftentimes my 5-year-old will just come up and just punch me. I'll say, what are you doing, sweetie? She's saying, Daddy, I want you to play. Okay, let's play, sweetie. Let's play. You don't have to punch me. Just tell me you want to play. If I'm in my heart and I can actually listen to her, and the two of us can meet in love. If I'm in a state of ego, and I'm saying you shouldn't punch, you shouldn't hit, you shouldn't be 5 years old, you shouldn't be tired, you shouldn't be struggling, you should know how to deal with your emotions more so by now, because you are 5, aren't you? And so if I go into those games, those illusions in my mind, I'll suffer greatly. And then, of course, there's a good chance she will suffer if I give her a reaction that's out of alignment with truth. That's out of alignment with truth. And so this is It's a big deal. It's easy to see this, when we're in relationship, because often our partner will point out our illusion. He or she will say, you always do this. When I say this, you do that. You always do it. You're like a broken record, or whatever it is. And the beautiful thing about being in relationship is that they will point that out. If you have any sense of mindfulness, you'll notice this. How you historically respond or react. How you grip inside when they say this thing or that thing. So many of us, we live in this kind of pain where we just react. There's no mindfulness there. But if we're willing just to take this backward step and to see our part and then our partner's part, that's a moment where awareness can expand. It's a moment where compassion can expand, where love can expand, where the truth can come forward. But it requires, that someone is bigger, is the bigger one. That someone is connected with their truth, their divinity. If we're in relationship and neither of us are willing to be bigger, neither of us are willing to be divine, we'll just be lost. We'll be lost. And it's a great gift, for you to listen to someone and say, I hear you. I hear your pain. I hear your struggle. I hear you. I see you. I love you, despite your humanity. Despite your humanity. But in order for us to have this type of heart, where we can say, I hear you, I see you, I love you, it's okay. We have to do this to ourselves first. First. And by that I mean we have to look inside and see there's something good within me. There's something holy within me. There's something divine within me. And I know this. I trust. I trust that what's here is okay. If we have no contact with our own innate goodness, with our own innate radiance and divinity, if we have zero contact with our true nature, we cannot be the bigger person. I mean, we can try, but it'll come, off in a way that's, like goody two shoes, where you're just, trying to do the priestly thing or the moral thing or whatever it is. And that could be a huge step forward for many people. But it'll feel somehow false or phony. And so it's important that you're in touch with your divinity. First, that you're nourishing that divinity. That you're in touch with your wound and you nurture the wound and meet it with love. Absolute love. Help it to relax. Help it to relax inwardly. And after it relaxes, then we can say, what do you need? How can I help? I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to put my story, my argument down and be here. Be here with you. Be here with you. So anyways, let's see here. There's a couple questions. Let me just glance at them real quick. Craig, can you give us a word about how to face the spiritual ego? Thank you very much. Well, one of the words for how to face the spiritual ego is laughter. The reason I say laughter is because the spiritual ego is a very silly thing. It's a very silly thing. And, one of the first stages of spiritual ego as it starts to arise is that the spiritual ego tends to dress up in a costume. Tends to dress up in a costume. Because the ego, it literally is a mask. It literally is a costume that we wear on our soul. And so that's how the ego relates to itself. And, I hate to say it, I'll say something that may be semi-sexist, but, like the whole yoga fashion industry, is based on the spiritual ego and dressing it up. For some reason it's latched on to wearing extremely tight pants, which is silly. It's just silly. If we were like people who are cyclists, who are into road biking, men and women, they both wear spandex and it's really tight to the body. But somewhere, in our spiritual silliness, we think that it's spiritually appropriate for women to wear really skin-tight yoga pants, and that this is somehow supportive of the spiritual superego. And for men, the thought is, they're supposed to wear flowing pants, which is, again, these are agreed upon illusions. They're both silly. And so it's just good to laugh at the ego, the way it dresses itself up, the way it, tries to be pure. If you look at the spiritual ego, you see at its core, it's insecure. It's deeply insecure. And so it says, I have to have my head shaved a certain way. I have to speak in hushed tones. I have to be good all the time and never have any emotions. The thing I loved about Christ is he really broke down the spiritual ego. The different rabbis at the time told him all the rules, all the politics. And a good spiritual ego will follow the rules of the dogma, it'll follow the politics. But someone who lives beyond a spiritual ego doesn't care about the rules of the politics if they're not based in truth. You can look at them and smile. Jesus did a great job of upsetting his fellow rabbis. He did an incredible job. He did such a good job that they had their way with him, unfortunately. And so in order to end the attachment to spiritual ego, you must find the heart and fall in love with the heart. Find the voice of God within you and listen to this first and foremost, more so than worry about how you look. How you look. I heard this funny story this morning when I camped by this lake, and I think it's called Trout Lake, and it had these beautiful snow-capped mountains in the background, like just framed the lake, and it was so beautiful. And I was chatting for a moment to this fella, and him and his wife were going to get out on their paddle boards, and we were joking a little bit about like doing yoga on paddle boards, and that's one of the things that someone thought up, that this is a spiritual thing to do. And paddleboarding is a lovely, peaceful experience, and yoga is a lovely, peaceful experience. Someone thought that we need to put these two together. And this fella, he told me, last year his wife was up here, and there's a whole group of ladies, he said, who were all done up, put all their makeup on and this and that, and they got up on their paddle boards, We're doing yoga. And his wife got up there, minus the makeup. No sense of wearing makeup, if you're going to go paddleboarding on a lake and you might fall in. And she attempted I guess a handstand. And didn't work out for her. She ended up in that ice cold lake, after attempting the handstand. And he had a good laugh, He had a good laugh about that. It was just so funny. And he said, like, all the other ladies were like, oh my God, I can't believe she fell. And what was she thinking? And, it's like, come on now, we're humans, we're silly. Sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes we fail miserably. Sometimes we end in a big splash. And so when we can laugh at ourselves, when we can smile at the ego, then it unhooks from our consciousness. And we hold on to it and say, I can't believe that happened to me. I'm absolutely humiliated. Well, then the ego becomes more entrenched. And so anyways, that's a beautiful question. Okay, let me see one more question here. Yes, and so the next question is, about, when we have our ego and it's fighting with us. It's fighting with us, and then we fight back with it. Oftentimes I call this, like judging the judge or criticizing the critic. Oftentimes in spirituality, we have this thought, all the thoughts in my mind should be pure. My mind should be silent and empty. I should always speak kindly to myself and others. But oftentimes we find, if we're honest, that we don't speak kindly to ourselves, let alone speak kindly to others. That inside we're just fighting with ourselves. Within my own self, I struggled with this for many years, where I had an inner drill sergeant, telling Craig to shut up, and then Craig would fight back and resist. And it was incredibly painful. It was like this, always an internal war. One voice was telling the other voice to shut up, get over it, knock it off. And then the one who was told to shut up would kind of clench his teeth and repress and fight back and argue, and it just led to tremendous hell. See, the one and only way that I was able to end this was to truly feel the extent of pain, the extent of suffering, the insecurity, the heartache, the sadness that was under that voice of criticism. And to feel that emotion fully. And so instead of, listening to the argument, what I did was I started to listen to the emotion beneath the argument. The emotion that was fueling the criticism, the war, the fight. And I noticed that there was a place within me trying to control, a place within me that didn't like what was happening in my life, a place within me that was trying to be spiritual and project spiritual ideals onto a place within me that was in tremendous pain. And so if there's someone in the room who's in pain and they're like wanting to scream, and you look at that person and say, you should be quiet. You should not talk. You should not have emotion. You should not have feeling. You should not be human. Or that place is going to scream louder. It's it's going to struggle more or repress or, create this weird game of like repressing and fighting and like repressing and then revolting, and you create this whole cycle of samsara. And so one of the things I did was I just stopped and I looked at my inner drill sergeant and I saw within me was a boy who was in tremendous pain, who was trying hard to just repress it all and get on with life. When I looked a little deeper, I actually saw the face of my father. And when my father was young, his parents they weren't really his parents, and he lived in a house with alcoholism and violence and abuse. And so he moved to a boys' home, almost like an orphanage, and then joined the army when he was just 16. He forged his birth certificate. And so he learned to use discipline and repression to get out of a very difficult life, in a childhood life. And in one form or another, at some point, I took this on. I took this on, whether through his modeling or the DNA or the epigenetics or whatever it was. I took this on, this internal voice. And I have said this often, that if as a parent you don't heal something within yourself, if you have a gaping wound, it just gets passed on to your kids. It's literally in the genes. It's in the DNA. It's in our mood. It's in our modeling. It's in our speech. It's in our voice. And so this was passed on to me just to repress and just to like keep working, get on with it. And the funny thing is, when I was dealing with this internal critic, when I felt the pain of him fully, intimately, when I admitted, my God, this poor boy is in a lot of pain, the energy behind it started to break, started to empty out, started to release, and my consciousness expanded. But if I did the opposite, if I said, this anger is unjustified, it shouldn't be here, I just need to shut up, my mind needs to be quiet if I'm going to be, a realized being or awake being, or if I told myself I need to shut up, awareness would contract. And so the critic is healed through compassion, through a willingness to see the struggle, see the pain, and to meet it with love. So we don't judge the judge. We love the judge. We say, I see you. I see you. I see that you're in pain. I acknowledge your pain. I acknowledge your suffering. I acknowledge your woundedness. I acknowledge that this isn't your truth. Your truth. Because what I saw, deep within me was that this voice of criticism and the drill sergeant wasn't actually my truth. And I actually saw it wasn't my father's truth. That it was simply what the Buddha would call an unskillful response to life. Just a really hurting response to life. And when we're hurting, we tend to judge quickly. When we're tense, we tend to judge quickly. When we're in our egoic nature, we tend to judge quickly. But if we're courageous enough to feel what's here, Oftentimes emotion moves through our body, the pain releases, and then we respond with greater love and compassion. I can say this personally because I suffer from, I get really bad headaches, and I have a 5-year-old in the house. Like sometimes when she's screaming, a normal tendency would be like, "Hey, you be quiet." That would be a normal response. When your body's in pain, it just wants everything to be quiet. But if I feel, the pain within me, the agitation within my consciousness, if I feel the pain in her consciousness, sometimes she'll be crying and maybe screaming or having a tantrum, and sometimes I'll just have tears that spontaneously move through me. And she'll say, "Dad, what are you doing?" And I'll say, "Oh, well, Daddy's just feeling so sad. So sad." And she'll say, "Me too." And then we laugh together, we hold each other, we love each other. We come together heart to heart. Couples can do this too. When you look at your partner and you see that they are in pain, and instead of saying, you should be quiet, you shouldn't be in pain, you shouldn't be emotional. When you acknowledge their pain and you acknowledge your pain in response to their pain, sometimes we just hold each other and cry together. And what you'll notice happens is your heart opens, love deepens, connection deepens, intimacy with all of life deepens. If your partner is looking at you and telling you they are in great pain, and it's because of you, and you look at them and say, "Well, you shouldn't be feeling that way." You put up a wall, you step into illusion, and then oftentimes what people do is they get on a heavy coat of armor and they just go at it. They go at it. And this leads to greater hell, greater suffering. But when someone attacks you and you honestly listen, honestly look, when you see in their eyes that they are deeply suffering, when you look into your own heart and see that I do have the resources to open to this. I do have the resources to be vulnerable with this. For what I am is the space of vulnerability. What I am is the space of love, is the space of compassion, is the space of that which is great. That which is great. And so all of us, we have this choice to meet the world from the perspective of our illusion, whatever that illusion is. There's not enough for me. I should be bigger, stronger, more beautiful, younger, older. We're on Instagram. I should have more Instagram followers. Whatever it is. Whatever our illusion is, I'm left out. No one loves me. No one cares. We have the choice to live from this place or to live from profound vulnerability. Profound strength and emptiness and freedom. From where shall I live? From where shall I live? And so anyways, it's so good to be here with you all. I think there's one more question. Let me see if I can pull it off. Craig, I sense while meditating a really great space everywhere, but at the same time the mind is always trying to subtly do something, and so the feeling of a body remains. So the first thing, my friend, is I encourage you not to demand not to demand that the mind stop working, the mind stop moving, because the mind is made to move, it's made to think. The second demand that you're asking is that you're asking that awareness does not register a feeling of a body. You have a body. And so if you have awareness, awareness is going to be aware of the body. It's going to be aware of the mind. Notice the great space is eternally here, whether you have a body or no body, whether there's thoughts or no thoughts. Be with the space, stay with the space. I can remember I stood before, my teacher, and he just asked, Craig, what's here? All the time. It's this vast space, the silence. This is what's here. He said, good, place your attention there. And I did. To be honest, I could have told him there's thoughts here and there's, a feeling of a body. And if I said, in order to be awake, I cannot have a feeling of a body and I can't have thoughts, well, hell, I might have to wait till I'm dead, but even when you're dead, you still have thoughts. You have movements of inspiration, movements of divinity. I mean, thought is not something bad. It's not something wrong. If you feel into thought itself, you'll notice they're little sparkles of divinity. Some of them are, lower on the evolutionary scale, and some are higher, more prayer-like. But if you have a body and you have a mind, you make a demand that they cannot exist, well, you're going to suffer. So focus on the peace, my friend, the spaciousness, the emptiness. Play with that. See what's there. See what you discover. And so, it's been so nice to spend this evening with you all. If you feel like supporting the Sangha, you can make a donation at craigholiday.com. If you want to join us on retreat this week, there's details there. Plenty of room. We'd love to have you. And my heart is with you all. With you all. So much love, so much respect for your divinity, your goodness, which is right here, right now, shining out of your eyes, out of your eyes. And so, may peace be with you all. May you all have a wonderful night. Good to see you.